I haven't seen the Fauci stuff at all, but people are hypothesizing if the Twitter files released the government involvement in the Hunter Biden story, it's going to be exponentially worse as to their involvement in censoring COVID, misinformation, disinformation. What were, I mean, in as much as you've gone through it, what were the highlights?
Well, there's overlap. So the same guy involved in Russiagate, the general counsel to James Comey, Jim Baker, was also the general counsel for Twitter, coordinating the suppression of the Hunter Biden story. And then you have the overlap of FTX, which, according to Elon Musk, he believes FTX gave over $1 billion to the Democratic Party, laundering money for the war in Ukraine, laundering money to attack ivermectin, laundering money to support censorship of COVID, laundering money to get special Democratic get-out-the-vote operations, laundering money to create various fake sites. Then you have the Secretary of State of Arizona governing her own election for governor, who is secretly conspiring with Twitter to remove her critics and people exposing election fraud in Arizona. So it goes deep, it goes broad, it goes wide. The biggest disclosure to me, Fauci apparently pled, I don't know, almost as many times as Hillary did. So it was like 179 times. Imagine if Alex Jones had said, I don't know, 179 times. They would have locked him up. Not just given a default judgment. They would have put him in prison, said he committed perjury, obstruction of justice. But Anthony Fauci, this high-ranking government official, can't even answer where his emails came from. Can't even answer what he knew at certain time periods. Couldn't even give one single study to justify anything he ever did during his deposition. It is an embarrassment to public health. And then you find out the FBI, high-ranking FBI officials were the lead people suppressing the Hunter Biden story and other stories, which comes out of both the deposition discovery and comes out of the Twitter files. The FBI was the lead at getting these things crushed and quashed. And it helped that they had their high-ranking coup plotter from 2016 as the legal counsel, general legal counsel of Twitter.
Robert, there's a lot to unpack there. One thing I want to unpack before we forget about it, the laundering. I mean, Elon has suggested $1 billion through FTX, through various. So there's the 40 million from SBF himself that he donated. If it's not 90% of it, because that was one of the figures I saw, it was the full 40 million. Two other executives, something like 30 some odd million. Then you've got the Mind the Gap that his mother's entity, Get Out and Vote, which apparently raised 140 million. Are you familiar with the interplay between FTX and its various organizations and how their involvement with the raising of 140 million for Mind the Gap, if there is any? Because I was under the impression that go for it.
Yeah, I would say we don't know because this is what people can track in public filings. So that what they can't track is all the shadow money, the dark cash, and the money that was filtered through multiple entities. Like, people are trying to figure out, Warnock in Georgia has apparently got tons of donations from unemployed people in the state of Washington. And it's like, why is that? That looks like it could be laundered donations. In other words, someone else really making those donations and laundering in other people's names to stay under the limit. But I think Musk's belief is not without justification. That if you have a scenario where 200 million or so went in combined that you can track and trace, suggesting $1 billion is just that there's 4 times of that was in the shadows is highly likely. And so this would be one of the biggest. I mean, Nixon got into trouble for taking $50,000 donations. This is $1 billion laundered in that implicates both COVID suppression, censorship, and implicates Ukraine, the Ukrainian conflict, and whether government money was even part of this. And so this is a guy who was protected by the FTC, CFTC, protected by the SEC, protected by the White House, had high-end meetings with all three, including the head commissioner in different places at different times, and still hasn't been arrested, and is still and is giving interviews all over the place. And the New York Times and the US are writing puff pieces about him. They basically, Democratic Party found themselves a Bernie Madoff to launder maybe $1 billion to Democratic campaigns to salvage off the defeat in 2022. And in the process, they covered up for this guy. And then now they're going to use his own corruption to go after Bitcoin, a competitor to the central bank digital currencies and the central bank currencies in general. So it was a deep state money laundering machine that makes BCCI look like it was amateur hour.
Robert, I'm going to pull this up just to show everybody here. This, I mean, it would be a joke if it weren't so damn serious. Rep Maxine Waters, we're looking at the same thing. I found my tweet made it into another article today. Rep Waters says, SBF Sam Benjamin-Fried _ FTX. We appreciate that you've been candid in your discussions about what happened at FTX. They're thanking this guy for his candor when he has text messages with that journalist admitting that he lied for PR purposes. They're thanking him for his candor. Your willingness to talk to the public will help the company's customers, investors, and others. To that end, we would welcome your participation in our hearing on the 13th. This is Maxine Waters, not a parody account. Maxine Waters invited. Thank you for your candor. Would you be so kind? I mean, if only Steve Bannon got this treatment, or Roger Stone. He replies to her, Rep Waters and the House Committee on Financial Services. Once I have finished learning and reviewing what happened, I would feel like it was my duty to appear before the committee and explain. I'm not sure that will happen before the 13th, but when it does, I will testify. To which I said, that'll be good enough for Rep. Max Waters. When you're ready, Sam, take your time. Take your time. You've been very good to Democrats, like delightfully good. And here's one report where 39.7 million SBF donated in 2022 alone, apparently 10 million in 2020. His mother's entity down there, Barbara Fried, has something to do with the Democrats as well. According to a report in the New York Post, she's a law professor at Stanford and co-founded the Democratic Action Committee Mind the Gap, which has raised 140 million this election cycle, which is something like, I think it's sevenfold what it was the last election cycle. He'll get around to testifying whenever he gets the chance. Robert, the COVID laundering stuff, I haven't been able, I mean, I could see some of it. That the idea behind that is that Sam Benjamin-Fried, through FTX.org, they started philanthropic, not-for-profits or charitable organizations who were funding, grants, financing, awards, whatever, research. And from what I've been told, but I haven't been able to verify this with my own eyes, so I remain not skeptical, but I would not repeat it as fact, apparently was funding studies that were used to discredit other treatments, early treatments that have been discredited. Do you have any firsthand knowledge of those allegations?
Yeah, it's definitely the case that he was suppressing ivermectin and in censoring access to ivermectin, which again was the most affordable, most effective early prevention treatment available. But it wasn't it didn't line up any drug company mass profit. So that's why it got suppressed, and it deterred vaccine development. In fact, legally precluded it from being developed because there was no emergency need for it if ivermectin worked. And so thus there was a massive campaign against ivermectin. The people like Alec Berenson and others were happy to campaign and be part of that campaign as well. But yes, there was direct money for there, no question. He came on my radar screen a few months ago when Politico did a front page cover story about the secret big Democratic donor and how his whole obsession though was to be on both sides because they didn't say he was doing any of this for crypto. They said he was doing all of this to stop the next pandemic. So he had his brother running a big anti-pandemic, so a lot of money funneled through there. And then his aunt sits on the World Economic Forum's public health response. So, I mean, you couldn't get more deep state than this kid. And most of the people that are aligned with him, and everything about it screams this was a personal deep state piggy bank serving deep state causes. And how far, and it's amazing, FTX is not being investigated. They're still harassing Trump. It shows you the insanity and imbalance of what's taking place.